Or just, well, what do you still want to?
I think it's good, no?
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, I have a bit of, I mean, you kind of claim that it was like a Eurocentric project and we just embrace this contradiction. Like, what do you mean? Wasn't this obvious?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, in the
这段剪成花絮。It's like behind the scene. Curator are fighting.
On one hand, there's the institutional collaboration, Parasite in Hong Kong and the Rock Band Art Museum. We were in conversations for several years already of working together. I think there's a lot of affinities in terms of the art that we're showing, considering the connections between Hong Kong and Shanghai, and the proximity, and also considering that these things that we have in common are quite particular. So I think there's definitely like an obvious commonality that our institution shares.
I think also the structure of the collaboration is very interesting. So it's in three parts in a sense. So we have the first exhibition in Hong Kong, and then it arrives to a new context here in Shanghai. And then sort of this will sort of culminate in another exhibition. So that would be kind of a response to the first two projects. So it's an interesting kind of dynamic in terms of how we sustain a dialogue together, and also sort of ruminate on these kind of issues, and sort of how it sort of can be allowed to articulate.
Yeah, I think as Cosmin mentioned that when we were talking about how to co-curate an exhibition, and since recent years that we have this interest in some topics about performativity, and I think that's the initial points how we started the idea of the exhibition.
Exactly, I think both institutions have worked quite extensively with different understandings of performance, with sort of both historical performance art and new developments in coming from contemporary dance, but also with the ways in which this presence of performing bodies in exhibition spaces is informing and shaping a lot of the contemporary curatorial discourses and strategies of exhibition making. But I think for this exhibition there's also a very important layer, because opera, and this is in many ways the beginning of the show, is also understood as a metaphor and as a key to understand different strategies in other aspects of daily life and culture. So opera is understood as a system that describes different strategies of staging, different strategies of artificiality, different ways of organizing design situations. All this happening on the background of the very strong cultural and historical meanings of opera in the different contexts in which it appeared, and that's an important part of the exhibition.
Well, basically the structure of the museum is quite vertical. So like when you go up to different level, that you will have different operatic setting. We also appropriate some elements from opera house in terms of architecture design and also color. For second floor, that you can see there are basically three sections. When you enter the space, we create a tunnel, and it's kind of a ritual of meditation that you go into another road that we create, and then you kind of enter in a hall of an opera house, and then you go into kind of the main stage, and then you can see different contexts, how do they respond and reflect to each other. And then for third floor, according to specific artwork, like for Wang Wei's work, it's a mural painting, and the work is strongly connected to the environment and architecture. So his work is becoming kind of a partition and kind of part of the architecture itself. And for fourth floor, that's we have this idea as to create like a backstage, and for people, for those actor or actress have some rest. And then we also used an element that you can see in the show in Hong Kong. It's a double and mirror glass that you can see from one side and cannot see from the other side. So it creates a very special feeling of space.
There's also some key decisions in terms of the color scheme as well as part of the vocabulary that's constant between the two exhibitions. If you want to talk about this as well, like in terms of like the choice between this kind of crimson, is that right to describe it as crimson?
Oh, I don't know. I think there's many ways of it. I think it was largely an intuitive decision, but no intuition is innocent, and you know, all such subjective decisions are also based on the different cultural references that shape who we are. And I think that this color is quite commonly associated across the world and across different histories and circumstances with power, with staging, you know, either the realm of performance, separating the day-to-day realities from the ceremonial space of the performative, of power as well. It's also like a royal color in many contexts. It's a color that has this weight of being special for many reasons, and you know, many of them are pragmatic in many contexts in the world. It was actually one of the most difficult pigments to obtain, so it was also expensive, so it was very often associated with prestige. So in our narrative, I mean, the starting point is this. It is the colonial dominance of the single way of understanding opera on one hand, and of the lingering influence of this colonial project. I mean, we have it at the beginning and very present, not because we take it for granted that this is the reality, but because we take it as the main object to deconstruct and to replace. When you talk about imperialism and fighting against imperialism, you don't do it because you want to uphold it, but because, you know, it's the main elephant in the room that needs to be addressed. And it's the same here, that in order to understand all this, the work that needs to be done in the deconstruction that needs to be done in this process of decolonization, one needs to really understand that body. A number of European artists or artists who actually dealing with European opera is a small minority.
Well, I think I would actually suggest probably because the title is an opera for animals, so I mean, for spectators, they will imagine, okay, this is an exhibition or a project related to opera. But if we go to different works, we will really find different systems, different contexts, and which will lead us to, I mean, kind of to go beyond the title, the imagination that brought by title to us. Yeah.